textbook of her science and system. Well, that's just really a very brief, a very thumbnail introduction into those three main categories, and you will see from your illustrated material that you receive with this talk that you have the divine system with its categories set forth. You have examples of the 7 synonymous terms and their ideas, as well as indications to the 4 operations and the 4 levels of spiritual consciousness. To go further would mean to go into a deliberate study, a complete study of what is taught in the textbook. You can see that science involves differentiation, diversity, complexity, order, and that we can test our progress in science, we can check our advancement in science by asking ourselves how we see the textbook. Do we see the complexity within the textbook? Do we see the order within the textbook? If everything sounds the same to us in the textbook when we read it, then we know that we haven't understood the science yet, that we haven't gone deeply enough into the categories of being, into the capitalized terms, into the synonymous terms, and the 4 operations. If we don't hear the categories in the text, then we know that we haven't grasped the science of it yet. We should ask ourselves, can I hear the difference from one chapter to another? Do I know the order of the chapters? Not just have I memorized the order, can I remember it because I have sat down with the table of contents and memorized the table of contents, but do I know the order of those chapters in their substance, in their structure? Do I know that text as a whole structure, an ordered, systematic structure? Does the textbook tell a logical, unfolding story to me? Could the order be changed? Am I aware of any order, any logic at all? Why is the first chapter first? Could the first chapter be second, or could I put it last? Could she have put it last? You see, these are the questions that will show us where we are in our own development and where we have to go. Does a chapter in itself make sense to me? Is it intelligent, logical sense from beginning to end? Does that chapter have, for me, for my sense of reasoning, a beginning, a middle in which the beginning is developed, and an end, a conclusion, a premise which is being led logically to a conclusion? Or is that chapter, as the rest of the text, just an unending sea of words and phrases? Phrases which I love, some of which are pet to me, pet phrases, some which are committed to memory, which I can quote by rote and feel very happy about, very comfortable with, isolated statements out of context? Or does the chapter really make sense? Does it have a logical flow? Do I see the categories in the text? Do I see order, system, Do I know what I'm reading category-wise? Do I know what I'm reading structure-wise, system-wise, within the whole system? Oh, it's a terrific thing. It's a real adventure, a real adventure. As Max says, this is much more exciting than healing one's corns. I love that. It's much more exciting than just healing the latest problem that one has. Do I see categories in the text? Order, system, structure, laws. You see, rules, method. Does that text have form? You know what form is? You know the term gestalt? Does the text have gestalt? In other words, can I see that every part, so-called, of that text carries out the general character of the whole? That the text is always a whole, and that actually there are no parts, there are only wholes, which are holistic parts. Do I see the design of that book? Is it a whole that is becoming increasingly differentiated to me, substantive in its form? Is it becoming my own consciousness? How can we have that experience? Only by culturing the categories that Mrs. Eddy teaches in her textbook. And so if the field today, if the church today, the organization, the field, the cause, the movement, whatever you want to call it, of Christian Science is in crisis today, is in trouble today, it is really only because it does not know the textbook. It does not know these things. So the crisis is not a crisis of people or events or politics or organization. The crisis is a crisis of not understanding the divine principle as Mrs. Eddy has revealed it to us. I want to move on to one last issue with you, and that's an issue that one hears. It is an eternal cry. And that cry is, this is all fine, but does it heal? Does this science heal? Does it heal better than the old Christian Science, so to say? And to that I would answer, yes, it heals, because it's Christian Science. And there is no old Christian Science or no new Christian Science. There is only Christian Science. And Christian Science heals. There is only one school of Christian Science. Understanding heals. Understanding is demonstration. But as our understanding of the textbook, our understanding of the principle evolves and matures and enlarges, it means that our limited concept is giving way, is falling away. And so our concept, our sense, our understanding of demonstration, our limited sense of demonstration, and therefore of practice and of healing, will also fall away, as at the same time it evolves. The limited sense will fall away. And so we will begin to see what healing is, what healing means, in a much bigger way than we ever have before. We will begin to see that it means infinitely more than we had, in fact, realized. Our sense of the problem, our sense of a problem evolves. Our sense of what our problem is evolves. So I would ask you in answer to your question, does it heal? What is your problem? What is your problem? What is the problem? And remember our rule that we have. I think it's become a rule after our last several hours together. And our rule is for every question that we go to the textbook to find the answer. So if we look in the textbook to see what the textbook says the problem is, and what Mrs. Eddy has said about the issue of a problem, or the problem, a problem, we see that the problem, the real problem, is not what we thought it was at all. And it doesn't say anything in the text about all those things that we call problems. What are some of the things that we say are a problem? Well, let's see. Having enough food on the shelf, having enough money in the bank to make the mortgage payment, being able to get a job. She doesn't even take the physical condition as the problem, as a problem. If you look up what she says about problem, you see that she says, your problem is the problem of being. It's the problem of being. She speaks of the stupendous life problem. In the preface, you know that she says that her early efforts revealed to her her comparative ignorance of the stupendous life problem up to that time, and the degrees by which she came at length to its solution. She's talking about her adventure, her experience of writing the textbook, and of what those steps were. That evidently she saw when she completed the textbook that she had answered, had found the answer, the solution to the stupendous life problem, the problem, in other words, of being. She speaks of the problem of mind healing, the problem of man, the problem of being, as we said. She says, when mentality gives rest to the body, the next toil will fatigue you less, for you are working out the problem of being in divine metaphysics. The great problem of being, she speaks of. She says, human belief has sought out many inventions, but not one of them can solve the problem of being without the divine principle of divine science. And she speaks of Jesus as working out the problem of being, of answering the demands of divine principle, truth, and love. And so this is what I mean, that as we go on, as we mature in the science, we begin to get a completely new sense of what our problem really is. We touched on it a little earlier, really, this evening, when we said that the only problem we have, the only question we have, is the first question in recapitulation, namely, what is God? This is the problem. And this question, this problem, this great positive problem, structures itself and can restructure and reform itself and come in any form to us. It can look like the problem of a physical drawback. It can look like the problem of unemployment. It can look like the problem of a relationship situation that isn't harmonious. It can look like anything. But remember the deep structure. The deep structure problem is the one problem, the one question: what is God? So that every problem is an individualization of that one problem. Well, you see that Mrs. Eddy says in prose works that the science of physical harmony is only the bugle call. She says that's the bugle call, and that the next great stage is the science of spiritual harmony. And so our little vision of science is giving way to a big vision of science. It's beginning to show us that what is being healed is the whole of consciousness. What is being healed is consciousness. What needs to be healed? What is it that really needs to be healed? Do we ever think, for instance, that what needs to be healed is our character or our attitude? That we need to be healed from an old standpoint, from an old viewpoint, from a limited standpoint. That what really needs to be healed is a narrow, parochial view of Christian Science. That what needs to be healed is a limited sense of existence, a Victorian view of Christian Science. That we need to be healed of a belief in Christian Science versus a scientific understanding. This is part of what has to be healed. It will appear as what we call a problem. The problem is disrupting, you see, our old view. The problem is disrupting our limited standpoint, our limited concept of what Christian Science is. It interrupts the limited ideal that we have of existence. That's usually what happens, is we feel that we have been imposed upon by the problem, that it is interfering with our sense of life, our sense of existence, our sense of freedom, of being able to live and move and have our being the way we want to live and move and have our being, and always have had it that way. And so we become indignant, and the problem seems to us to be a nuisance. We don't have time for it. And we demand that Christian Science should heal the problem. It should heal it on our terms and according to our schedule and our standard. So we want to get rid of the problem, whereas the problem is the most wonderful thing, you see, because it is the Christ. It is the Christ that is overturning the old consciousness, the old form of consciousness. We want to get rid of the problem so that we can return to our old position, that we can take up our life where we left it before the problem came in. Take up the outworn view of existence. And when the problem isn't dealt with the way we have specified according to our terms, our schedule, our standard, then we tend to feel that Christian Science has failed, that it has failed us. Never seeing that that problem is